Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members. While we get our final technical setup, I think I could be a little more efficient if I just say ditto to the last comments that I just heard as part of our presentation. I came in with a presentation for you, and we have that provided. I want to deviate just for one moment, and I know I have a limited amount of time, but I want to carry on part of the conversation. I know that you've had the opportunity to hear other department heads from members of the criminal justice system, and my fellow elected justice partner just mentioned to all of you the needs that we have in our justice system. And I think I caught at the tail end one of his comments about highlighting the work we need to keep people out of jail. And that is one of our goals as well, because it is harder for our staff and it is harder for our department when there are more people incarcerated, as evidenced by our recent Committee of the Whole presentation, where we gave you guys a very clear picture of what is happening right now, how we are at a critical mass, how we are at a critical point, a flashpoint, if you will, in our justice system right here in the city and county. We've done what we can to improve those conditions. We have about a 20% increase in our electronic monitoring and our community-based programs for people that are justice involved but out of our custody. But even with that, we've had an increase of about 36% of our jail population. And a lot of what we talk about today is going to be about putting people first, putting our staff first, putting the incarcerated first, making sure that as much as it has been communicated that we have received an increase in our budget, there is still a need to put people first here, and that is directly in regards to the justice system. Our staffing, as you will see in the following slides, if we can go to the slide presentation right now, our first slide just highlights what our goals are. These strategic plan goals we've had since I came into office have not changed and are a part of what moves our budget process. And those are the 6 goals we have. I'm going to focus today in our presentation on our public safety and our improving accountability and enhancing our workforce. Next slide. We've done a lot of good work with what we've had. As I mentioned earlier, we had an increase in our budget to help us address immediate problems. But last year, in working with our budget, we were able to move forward on some things, but still haven't gotten there when it comes to our staff. Next slide, please. And although our staff represents the very best of San Francisco, represents the diversity that we share as a community, although it represents a number of accomplishments in terms of getting out there to try to recruit people, to try to bring people in, to try to fill those vacancies that were referenced in the last presentation, to continue with our hiring process and our training process, which involved 5 different regional academies last fiscal year, which involved the hiring of a number of individuals, but not near what we need. If you go to the next slide, please, you'll see that our workforce service bands, in terms of the age, we're concerned about the attrition and matching just attrition. This year, we're going to be asking for 75 positions to be filled. That's our goal, but it really doesn't meet what we are trying to achieve, which is also to match the attrition rate that is occurring. And that's why we provided this slide for you for your review later. Next slide, please. Our hiring numbers, as also referenced in the previous presentation, are somewhat dismal in regards to how many people we are able to bring in. And despite our best efforts, we have been having challenges in doing so, which has been reflected in our overtime, because we have been running on overtime, and we appreciate the support there that we have continued to receive from the city in regards to that. It's not for lack of trying regarding our workforce recruitment. We are right now, with our 39 current hires and probationers and trainees, we're at about 30% for one of our initiatives, which is to replace or to reach our 30 by 30 initiative, which is to get 30% of our workforce to be reflective of women by 2030. And we're encouraged by the work that we are doing, but we can do more. Right now, I wanted to highlight that our current hired numbers reflect that percentage, and we want to continue that. Our goal, again, is to hire 75 individuals. We're committed to that 30 by 30 initiative. We have streamlined our processes in regards to bringing people on board in testing and hiring. We have a personal touch where we have actually one recruiter. The one recruiter that we do have has spoken to hundreds of people personally, not by email, not by text, but personally spoken to people before, during, and after the testing process. let me skip the next slide that highlights our community engagement efforts, but I want to make sure I focus on three things for what we're asking for in terms of improvements to our budget, all directly related to putting people first. In regards to the safety of our staff, in addition to making sure that we have the right recruiting budget to bring more people on, we're asking for support in getting more body-worn cameras for our people that are currently working so that we can create a safer environment. There are many benefits to that. We have not gotten enough cameras on our people, and we need more. We are also asking, again, for money in the recruitment area in terms of getting people on board, just being fair. I think fairness was mentioned earlier in regards to how everybody has a piece of the pie here in the justice system. And it is true, we have focused publicly efforts out in the community on an agenda which resulted in bringing more people into the jail. And I think we are at that critical point now where we need to have some more investments in our system itself. I do want to highlight one thing just in terms of health care in the jails. We have a very dedicated group of employees who work to make sure that we bring the same level of care to those that are incarcerated as we do in our public health system. And yet that reflects 1% of the budget of the Department of Public Health in regards to what we have invested in our incarcerated population. And some of the requests that we have reflect a commitment to making sure we improve on those numbers. In the interest of time, I won't go over the other remaining slides, which reflect what our department-wide budget sources are and what our uses are in order for you to have the opportunity to ask me any questions. So I thank you for your time. I want to reemphasize that we are looking towards help where we need the help the most with our people.
Thank you. Supervisor Ronan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheriff. Did you say that increase is 36% in the jail population?
I think our snapshot from May 14th is the one that we referenced in the committee as a whole, and we saw a 36% increase in the population from that time last year to this year.
From year to year?
Yes.
And just in terms of the conversation that I was having with the public defender that you caught at the end there, given this massive increase in the jail population year to year, do you think that if public defenders had a lower caseload, that would result in lowering the jail population to some degree? Would it make the cases move faster?
I think to be realistic in regards to that, we would have to also take into consideration another justice partner, the court system itself, because we can only process cases to the extent that there is accessibility in the courtrooms themselves. So there would be another partner that we would have to make sure that we coordinate with in order to see that.
And it was interesting, when the Superior Court was here, they said that the backlog has gotten significantly better. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
I think there's been a concerted effort, just as we've seen reflected on the streets, there's been a concerted effort in the courtrooms to process cases faster, and we do see that reflected in the work being done there.
So you would agree that it's gotten better from last year when we talked about this, where it was unbelievable backlogs.
Yes, I think what the effort has been is to, and I don't want to speak for another department, but
Right.
what we've just seen anecdotally for my staff that are involved in the courtrooms is the calendars.
Yeah.
A lot of cases which were backlogged have moved forward and started processing a little more. It doesn't mean they're completely closed and finished, but it does mean that they're moving forward.
Okay. And then in terms of, are you, I read this in an article in the newspaper, but are you, or maybe someone told me about this. Now I'm trying to remember where I heard this, but I heard that you're looking at removing sheriffs from some of other duties to put them in the jails to deal with the staffing crisis in the jails and the increased population. Is that happening, and is that true? And if so, where?
That is part of our planning process and in our partnerships with moving towards making sure we have a budget that meets the needs of the entire city. We've worked to eventually move away from staffing the medical examiner's office with deputies. Those are sworn positions which will see an immediate impact on going back to the custody division and having impacts on staffing there. So that is one example of where we are moving towards putting people back in the jails. I mentioned to you that even with our efforts with deputies that are deployed on our safe streets, those are being detailed from units and divisions outside of the custody division. So we're no longer using people from the jails to do those detail assignments.
Okay. And then are there programs, I was talking about this as well, like educational programs, therapeutic programs that are not operating in the same way that they used to before this staffing crisis and increase in population that you would like to see, be up and running in a more consistent basis?
Absolutely. We have historically had successes with our programs. In fact, today I'd like to just say, coincidentally, that today we marked our in-custody graduation of individuals or students from our 5 Keys program. We had 16 incarcerated individuals who just graduated this afternoon. I missed that event because I'm here, but we still celebrated the fact that we got people through that process, and we are very hopeful through the summer months that we're going to continue to have an increase in some enrollments in those programs. We've done this before. We plan on doing it again, and we just need more people to help us get that done.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Mandelman.
Thank you, Chair Chan. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your presentation. I mean, the staffing crisis is real and acute and highly problematic for deputies and for incarcerated folks. Now, I am trying to think about this sort of historically, and the jail population is no higher today than it was when I started as a supervisor, I think.
It's very close to that number. It's more reflective of pre-COVID numbers, right before we closed the 7th floor at the Hall of Justice.
And it is, I think, well below what it was 10 or 15 years ago.
Yes, our numbers back in that time reflected about 100 to 200 more.
So, I mean, can you talk about the way, I mean, there are many factors that have added to the staffing challenges. Just to revisit, it is not just the overall population, because the population is sort of back to pre-COVID levels, which were down from historic levels. So, what is driving the staff? I mean, there aren't enough staff, but it's also more. There are greater challenges now, which are creating a greater need for staff, right?
That's correct. Back in the pre-COVID days and the days that reflected a higher population 10, 15 years ago, we had additional jail space as well. So we had the ability to spread our population out to address what we call classification factors, individuals who couldn't stay together, special needs individuals who had to have a specific type of housing arrangement. We don't have that ability anymore with only 2 locations. The opening of the dorms has been one in which we have been able to create a space which is safe. All of the challenges we've had in terms of assaults on our staff, in terms of individuals who get into Donnybrooks in the jail, have all been in spaces other than the dormitory spaces. So we've had the ability to expand out into a safe space. However, our numbers, as you mentioned, are more reflective of pre-COVID numbers now, where we did have an additional jail.
And I would assume that it is, although the primary staffing challenge relates to the jail, your deputies have some responsibility for the non-custodial population as well, which is, I think if there's been growth, like there is a larger non-custodial population than there used to be, I think. Is that right? Absolutely.
If memory serves me, this time last year, June, July last year, we've seen a 20% increase in the numbers for our out-of-custody responsibilities, our pretrial individuals who are on electronic monitoring, who are on assertive case management supervision. Today, when I looked at the numbers, we average about 380 to 400 on a daily count for individuals on ankle monitoring, and 1,700 total in our program itself.
And would you, again, not going to hold you to this because I didn't ask you this question before, but I'm imagining that that number is larger than it was in 2018 or so.
Yes, there was about a 20% increase between then and now well, there's more of an increase between then and now. We absolutely, both pre-COVID, after we closed the jail, and during COVID, saw a reversal of our numbers between who were incarcerated and who were out of custody. So they basically interchanged, for lack of a better term.
But is the non-custodial population going down now? Or did the non-custodial population go up, the custodial population went down, and now the custodial population is going back up again, but
There's been a slight decrease only in the number of participants in our community programs. Our electronic monitoring numbers have remained the same, fluctuated only by about 20 or 30. So that's not a significant change. However, our overall numbers have changed just slightly in terms of reducing.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I have asked everyone this question, so it shouldn't be any surprise. I just want to confirm, currently, and thank you, Sheriff Miyamoto, thank you so much for your work. And it's a very difficult time, and it's a very challenging time, and especially given through what we have been through with pandemic and where we're at now. But I just wanted to confirm, I'm looking at what is your current FTE?
For our total staff or just the sworn?
Total staff.
Currently, we have 713 sworn staff. There's another 103 professional staff, and another 96 cadets, and then there's an additional 53 members who are Prop F.
Trying to do my math relatively quickly. So you have about 965 FTEs total, out of which you have about 713 sworn sworn staff. Help me understand though, because I think I'm not quite seeing it in here, and I'm not too sure, and which I really appreciate. Of course, again, the work that you do, but I'm trying to understand, I don't quite see it here to have an org chart to help us understand a little bit, as I have asked all city departments, just an org chart to help us understand how our sheriff or deputy sheriffs are actually allocated. Where do they go? What exactly they do? I hope to see an org chart. I don't expect you to produce like right now on the spot. I hope that we can see one as we continue to this communications with budget and legislative analysts, kind of try to figure out and help us understand, a few things. I think during the, public hearing that we have at the full board. One of the things that, and I kind of hear you, because I think that the question was posed about recruitment. And we had this conversation with SFPD a couple fiscal years ago, and as a result, that there was actually $600,000 allocated for SFPD, for our police department, specifically for recruitment consultant. But if I recall that hearing correctly, there was a mention about very similar question. What was your recruitment strategy, or what is your recruitment strategy? I think, Sheriff, you mentioned that you have asked for $400,000 for a recruitment, I think either consultant or investment in that strategy, but it was denied when you present your budget to the mayor, and it wasn't included in the last fiscal year. And I just wanted to understand then, where do we stand now, given the fact that we recognize that there's a shortage here, quite significant, because you have over 200 vacancy right now.
Absolutely. To go back to your, for the staffing allocation, we'll absolutely be able to provide that information, especially because by seeing that, you'll also note something that we haven't mentioned yet, which is, although that number reflects 713 total sworn positions, that also includes the number of individuals who are out on disability or long-term
leave.
visibility. Yeah, so it absolutely will be a better picture for you to see what our challenge is operationally. Secondarily, about the reference to the money and the recruiting strategy, we have the plan, we just don't have the funds to act on the plan. And our original plan didn't reflect bringing in a consultant, but it did reflect monies towards some of the areas that we want to focus on. We've been very fortunate to have our current recruiting team focus on educational institutions, colleges at both the state and university level. We have the ability to get to community events and recruiting plans through our current staff, but the ask in terms of the budgeting would help us reach out further on social media, on the internet, on web-based recruiting strategies. And we've worked with some companies on that at the pilot level, and we want to act on that. I couldn't give you the names right now or the details, but we do have that baked into our plan.
And your plan, you have a plan, but it's not funded.
Correct.
And it's still not funded in this fiscal year.
That's correct.
And then I think the question that I also had, with this though, I do want to highlight one thing that the board actually has done and in support of for the MOU for the deputy sheriff that we approve is that we are providing very similarly to SFPD's MOU to provide retention bonus for those who reach a milestone in their on the force. In this case, if I recall correctly, for the deputy sheriff, it will be 8 years, 11 years, and 13 years. When they reach those milestones, then they will have a retention bonus. Clearly, I think it took almost a year and a half before it come to fruition for SFPD. I think they're actually doing way better than they were a year and a half ago. How do you anticipate that impact?
I think while we appreciate the efforts taken in regards to retention, it actually has a challenging effect on our recruitment efforts, because the numbers that the police department received for their retention efforts were double or 2.5 times more than the percentages received for the DSA and the deputies. So that created a recruitment issue for us in regards to having comparisons to the two jobs, trying to pull from the same pool of applicants and interested people that are interested in coming into our profession. It makes it a little more challenging for us to have a better recruitment package for them when those numbers aren't the same. And so that was a challenger for us, but we did appreciate that. We were looking to helping those that are currently working.
And how about lateral hiring?
Well, one thing that's interesting, I heard the public defender mention his hiring process and attorneys leaving for other places. We've seen some of that post-COVID. Or during COVID, we actually had individuals leave, but out of 12 who went to one particular agency, 7 came back, because we do have attractive packages and we do have an attractive approach to being an employee in the city and county of San Francisco, which people don't realize until they leave. So the grass isn't always greener, and we leverage that as a part of making sure we retain our people. And also lateral hires are actually in our background process. Today, again, coincidentally, I just signed on 5 more background packets for hire, trying to squeeze in another class before, or at least prepare for the next fiscal year. So we have individuals who are coming to us. We don't have an active recruitment effort towards lateral transfers, but I believe in our planning strategy, there have been references to having that baked into our plan if we get the funding.
I'm going to shift the gear a little bit. Sheriff, do you think that the overcrowding in your system right now, in our system, in our jail system right now, and including, it's really regrettable to have shut down like the way you've been having. Do you contribute that to a policy issue, or do you contribute that to a staffing issue?
It's absolutely a staffing issue. We actually go below our minimum staffing numbers past what our past markers have been to significant numbers before we shut things down. And we've been doing that consistently now for well over a year. It is an absolute challenge for us because our population has changed, and those that are in our jails right now reflect people that have challenges, that are often in crisis, that are often in need, while they're housed. And because of that, we've had that spike in increase in assaults on our staff in dealing with people. We create the safest environment possible, but there have been slowdowns and shutdowns reflected in the last presentation. Just trying to get people access to their attorneys now takes time. We don't stop it from occurring, but it does slow our process down when we don't have enough people.
I want to say, though, I do share a sentiment with my colleagues and including Supervisor Ronan in terms of, the question, again, around charging decisions, policies, and whether it contributed to overcrowding, jail system. And then here we are facing the challenges that we face as an entire system. I think that impact everyone, every sector, or everyone in this sector. Well, thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate your work. Thank you for your presentation today. I don't see any other name on the roster. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Next, we have Department of Police Accountability.